um, what I would consider kind of the magic tricks. Oh, I can use it to create some new marketing. Oh, I can use it to develop a new image. But I don't know that we've gotten far enough down into the meat of what AI can actually do in terms of process improvement, streamlining, getting to a place where we can remove some redundancies. And I think that the other element that people kind of leave off of that, or maybe don't talk about enough, is as you start to find ways to save time, as you start to find ways to remove redundancies or be more efficient, what do you do with that time? And I think most people are saying, oh, I'm going to use that time now to reduce cost, which makes sense. There's something you got to think about there. But I think there's another element, which is how are you going to use that time to improve the customer experience? And I love when I think about companies like Uber or Apple. They don't sell you the technology of the phone. They don't sell you the technology of the app. They share with you the stories that those things create, the outcome that people want. So a phrase I use often is, and I got it from my good buddies over at 1000 Watt Consulting, is people don't want a 1/4 inch drill. They want a 1/4 inch hole. They want the outcome. So they don't want AI. They want the outcome AI can provide. They don't want it to only be about, increasing margins. They want it to be a world in which you can create a better customer experience and more communication. And I'll kind of leave with this, or head into this direction, but if anyone's ever called their cable company, it's the most frustrating thing in the world. I get stuck in call trees. I'm using their technology. I'm trying to get someone on the phone. And really what I just want to do is talk to someone. I'm hitting 0 a bunch of times. I'm asking for a representative. So I think in our space, more than any other, it should be used to empower relationships and not replace them. And so that's a big focus of where we're at.
Which dovetails into, let's kind of move, because you touched on this. Let's move into the customer experience. And you kind of touched on this a little bit about the cable company, but what role does personalization play in enhancing the customer experience at WFG?
Yeah, I mean, it's our North Star. We talk about customer experience all the time. One of our cornerstones is to reimagine the customer experience. And to do that, it means it's something that you're in pursuit of always. You never accomplish it. You never just achieved customer experience. There's a lot of elements to that. You need to have feedback loops and a methodology for tracking it. So we stay very focused on our customer satisfaction scores, on our net promoter scores. We learn even more from the ones that go wrong. Where was there friction involved, and how can we remove that friction? And so it's a continual focus. But I think that everyone tries to, and rightfully so, tries to scale customer experience, when I think the key to customer experience is optionality. You might have someone who wants to do remote online notary, and you might have someone who wants to come sit in your office for 90 minutes and sit across the table from you and look you in the eye and sign with the pen. And you have to be set up to handle both of those situations. And a good friend of mine, her name's Brittany Hodak. She has a book called Super Fans. So if you haven't read it, you should. It's a phenomenal book. But she said that the biggest misnomer is the golden rule, which is treat people how you want to be treated, with really the platinum rule: treat others how they want to be treated. So it's looking at each customer as a customer of one and figuring out how you can meet them where they're at to provide them that experience. And to be honest, the customer is getting more demanding of that. People are more opinionated. They're happy to go onto social media and talk about things that were great. They're happy to go on social media and talk about things that were bad. And so knowing that, the best way to unlock it is to turn them into your raving fans, to your super fans. And so you do that by creating highly personalized, one-to-one, memorable experiences. And it's not going to be, it's going to be looking at every touch point: what it's like to walk into one of your offices, how people are greeted, what's the user interface of your technology, if you ask for feedback, how is the way that you're asking for it? But then it also comes back to empowering your people. So do you empower your people? Do you have a culture where people can look for opportunities to elevate? Oh, I see that this person really likes to drink Coke Zero, and so I'm going to have a Coke Zero sitting for them at the signing table when they come in. Or we had a closer the other day who had a difficult transaction. There was a separation happening, and the mother came in with her young son, and their young son was really upset. and the closer actually made their own personalized document with the son's name on it, so the son could sign one of the documents on this new house. Oh, aren't you excited for your new house? And it turned the entire, energy in the room around. So I think you have to think about it. I think you have to look for all the points of friction, but it still gets back to that level of, can you create something memorable and personal by creating a culture and empowering your employees to look for those opportunities in those moments?
That's so powerful. So great story and example there. I love that. Two fronts. I'd like to talk about how you measure that customer feedback in the journey map, and then I think maybe start with two. I know you have the talent inside your organization to do this, but what's your view on smaller businesses, some of the professionals on, how did they get started in really breaking down that kind of journey mapping exercise that really helps you think about that, what you want the experience to look like in those touch points?
Yeah, I mean, a good question. I don't mean to be cheesy here, but it's like, how do you eat the elephant one bite at a time? And I think, sometimes people get stuck in the analysis side of that. They're just constantly like, well, I don't know how to map this out. And so they don't start. I very, very vehemently follow a model that I call learn, do, iterate. First, you have to learn or consume new information. Then you have to get to action, and you have to get to action fast. And then after you get to action, you need to iterate. What happened and what can you do next? And the quicker you can get through that iterative process, you might try 15 things and only 2 of them work, but that's fine because you're going to find that. So to your question, I think where you start is talk to a couple of customers, get in that learning phase, talk to a couple of employees, see where they are seeing points of friction, and then try something. And if it works, do more of it. And if it doesn't, what did you learn from it and what can you do next?
Yeah.
So for us, we actually are in the middle of launching a new CX platform. But 7 years ago, we found a company called Gather Up. It was a little survey company. It was pretty much self-serve. They didn't have a lot of back-end help. And we implemented into our signing process to ask one simple question, which was just, how likely would you be to refer our business to a friend or family member, which is the prototypical Net Promoter Score question. And it took on a mind of its own. We started getting great feedback. We started getting more online reviews. We started getting more testimonials. Now, fast forward 6 or 7 years, we are much more sophisticated. I can go in and look at that from a buyer to a seller, or from a listing agent to a selling agent, or what a lender thinks on a refi versus a purchase. And we've added in customer satisfaction score, and we have a process for how we respond to reviews now. And we've gotten much more sophisticated. But the key was 6 or 7 years ago, simply recognizing an opportunity to create a feedback loop, taking that first bite out of the apple, and then continuing to try new things along the way. And we will never stop. I mean, that's reimagine the customer experience. We will never stop thinking about how that can be better.
I think you said it so well about kind of that iterative process, and you hear agile come up a lot. I think look at where the process maybe starts, right? And then you focus in on those touch points and that. So to your point, kind of just take a piece of paper or a whiteboard and, break up very macro level from the initial introduction to the customer, right? And then at the very tail end, you think about the post close, right? You're onboarding them, and then you can kind of brainstorm. But to your point, to try to do it, and I agree. I've seen clients try to do the whole thing in a couple hour work session and so forth, and
you can get overwhelming. I mean, Matt, if the priority for someone is that they really want to have customer personas and user journeys and someone to come in and do a process audit and all those things, and they should hire you, because that's an area of expertise. If they're just looking to get the process started and not overthinking it, yeah, it's as simple as, carrying around I would say getting your antennas up, just being aware, and having a notepad with you. And when you see something or when you hear something, going like, oh, that felt clunky. Oh, that felt a little bit more difficult than I expected that to be. And so again, I think it just all starts with an awareness, or trying to be perceptive, and then just trying things. And one of my I'm sorry to keep referencing folks, but another person I think really highly of is a gentleman named Nick Mallory. And Nick, he's in the beer industry. He's a really amazing marketing guy in the beer industry. Has worked for some phenomenal brands, and he always says that anyone who tells you that good marketing is a science is lying. It's a good gut and a lot of luck. And so, like he'll bring up the example of the pink Stanley thermos. And he's like, listen, any marketing person who said, I have an idea, this pink thermos is going to become iconic from Stanley, the old green beat up construction worker thermos, they're lying. What they did is they had a decent gut. They tried something and it just happened to catch on. So I think that there has to be a process of being willing to take some risks and try some things, because you don't know what you're going to stumble onto until it actually happens.
Amen. Agility. I know on a personal side in my practice, being a small business owner, I don't have the luxury of having a staff around me. So sometimes you just got to sit here and, iterate.
Yep.
I don't like doing the self-promotion, but at the same time, I need to put the message out there. What does Allen, what does Matt do? So you're seeing me lately on LinkedIn put some kind of poster, like a movie, don't take the journey alone, right? See, being a CEO. And, I'm trying to see what's going to resonate, what maybe gets me somebody to, engage with me. And so, I love what you just said right there. And I think, again, encourage people, take calculated risk, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean to take risks without any thought. That's why I love this kind of learn, do, iterate. There's a really great book called The Creative Curve, and it talks about the people who end up being the best at their craft are also the ones who consume the most. And so the best writers read the most books, the best, filmmakers watch the most films. And so I think there's this element here of consumption, where if you really care about your space, you should be consuming as much information as you can constantly, and then figuring out how to apply it. And I also love another element in that book. It talks about the best ideas are both novel and familiar. And so if it's too novel, it's scary. And if it's too familiar, it's boring. But if it's rooted in familiarity, but you can find a novel spin to it, those are the things that really seem to land. So, I hate to reference them again, but you take a company like Uber. Uber didn't reinvent a space completely. They took a space like getting a cab, which is a very familiar space. I need a car. And they came up with a novel spin on it. I think that's where you can really find ways to create that differentiation, or find ideas that work. And so I love that. Just find ideas that are both novel and familiar.
Well, that's before we move on to the other topics on the CX front. And I know you're a data geek like me, and I know that you measure your programs. And so talk about maybe, or give a good example. You did a little bit earlier about situation with the child, but talk about kind of a success story with the CX program and the training and all the different programs you're doing. How is that being measured and looked at, and maybe a success story in the loyalty department with your customer?
Yeah. I mean, so first and foremost, it's what's the old phrase? If you don't measure it, you can't manage it. So if we want customer experience to be a priority, we have to have a methodology for measuring it. Our current methodology asks 3 questions. It asks a customer satisfaction question. It asks a NPS question, and then it has a gateway question that if they answer that was really good, we try to send them out to Google My Business, where they can review our locations or our folks. Inside of that, all this stuff starts to tether together. Inside of that, not only do people know it's a focus, they see the responses to those surveys, they know what it is for their individual desk or their individual branch or their individual operation, but then we have OKRs and a methodology for wanting to improve upon it. So if our customer satisfaction score or NPS score was, say, 81 last year, This year we're saying, hey, how do we get it to 83? And next year it'll be, how do we get it to 85? So I think that you have to have a methodology for measuring it and make it a priority. Then you can also reward it. We want to make sure we're giving people gratitude and recognition when they do a good job, and having a process around that. We want to make sure that when someone does have a bad experience, we have a process for calling them to see what happened, because I think it's Yelp who says 70 or 80% of people who have a bad experience, if you handle it the right way, will go from a negative experience to a positive one. And so it's just starting to put all that stuff together. And then the way it all kind of culminates is then it becomes a marketing campaign for us. And then it's about, how do we showcase our service in a way that isn't just fodder, or where everyone says they give the best service, but we actually have a way to prove it. So one of the things we'll say from time to time is, hey, our net promoter score is actually higher than the Ritz-Carlton's, which is an amazing place to stay, right? Or we have a campaign called Hello, my name is, or we look for those wow stories, those moments that matter stories, and they become a part of our marketing. Company who does a really good job of that is Chick-fil-A's campaign called The Little Things. And it's like, they have someone at their restaurant do something really special, they hear that story, and they make a commercial out of it. So I think it goes from being curious, putting a system in, having a way to measure it, promoting, showing gratitude, and putting OKRs around it. And then that's when it can start to become part of your marketing, part of what you're known for. And you hear companies all the time where they say, oh, I love Nordstrom's, they have the best service. Oh, I love Chick-fil-A, they have the best service. Oh, I love Costco, they have great service. That's what happens as a byproduct of doing all the other things.
Yeah. Well, let's move into a topic I know that you love. You love customer experience, right? It starts with the customer, but let's talk about marketing. Let's talk about content. I'm a believer in content is king and queen in today's age, where we're kind of hybrid, virtual, online.
The old phrase is, content is king, but distribution is queen, and she wears the pants.
Yeah. So there you go. So I love that. So on that topic, what's proven to engage the target audience? And you can, talk a lot about the title piece of it, because you've spent a decade plus in that vertical. But if there's other best practices that you're aware of, so what's working the most as far as actually engaging the customer?
So it's going to be kind of a funny answer. You of course have to have top down and bottom up marketing. I mean, you have to have an idea of who your company is, and you want to signal out to the world what your brand stands for, and what your brand is. But the the reality of your brand is, it's only what the customer thinks it is. And so I think that a lot of companies really try to use some outdated techniques here. They try to be, well, we have brand standards, and we have to follow very strict guides, and everything needs to make sure our font is perfect and our logo is perfect. And what they end up doing is, one, they end up becoming boring. And two, they stifle the most important element of marketing, which is actually trying to turn all of the people who interact with your company, both employees and clients, into influencers. And so I look at companies like, I think it's Citrix, they have 30 or 50,000 employees. They've shifted their whole process to, how do we turn our 30 or 50,000 employees into micro influencers who tell the story of Citrix, a tech company, through my eyes. Because when Cindy in accounting says something about the company she works for, and she's willing to put that out to her small audience on Facebook, and you start to empower all 30,000 or 50,000 of those people to do the same, what you have is really organic, user-generated content told in a compelling way through the eyes and the mouths of the people who are living it, to people who already want to listen to them. When I say something, someone wants to listen to me. When WFG, the brand, says something, no one wants to listen to that. And it's even ironic, because I don't want to pass judgment here, because we do it too, but it's just, there's an irony of it. It's like, don't wish somebody happy holidays with your logo on it, because that's not happy holidays, that's marketing, right? And so I just think that what I'm seeing now is, even really big companies that are shifting to, how do we unlock the opportunity of all of our people to become individual tentacles to a subset of an audience that then can roll up to a bigger thing? So one often overlooked part of marketing is internal. Have you gotten people to be internally connected, or EX? Do they know what the company stands for? Are they loving their job? Do they feel compelled to share that story out? So we work really hard on trying to help people become the best representation of themselves, be authentic, and then appeal to whatever audience they appeal to. That being said, yes, we still have corporate marketing campaigns, and we still have high level stuff that we're doing, and we still have PR plans and all of that. But I think social media has changed it from, I used to drive down a road and I would see a billboard and I wanted brand consistency because I wanted someone to be able to recognize that billboard quickly, to now I'm rolling through a news feed. I'm seeing thousands of marketing messages today, and I actually don't want someone to be able to ignore it because they recognize it. I still need to keep it topical and fresh and relevant and timely and all of those different things. So content creation has to be a part of that strategy, but I think user generated content is the best content you can get.
Yeah, and I think on that too, larger enterprises like yourself, I think internally there, when you're forming your strategy, a key best practice there is really thinking about the ICP internally of what the C-suite and the messaging and the branding and what you want that to look like versus a frontline employee, right? Where maybe you want to get more out of that, attracting future talent into the organization, where you're going to use the C-suite to be more impressive to the Wall Street, the investor community, and so forth. And so I think you kind of give them some messaging best practices, but that they expect that frontline employees necessarily going to represent you to the investor community. That's not really their job, but you do want them to attract future talent. And you do want your customers to also hear from your employees on how great it is, because we know there's a linkage of EX to CX.
Yep.
And profitability, right? There's, Jim Collins and many other industry thought leaders have tied that correlation. So let's talk about this piece, because again, I know that you do a lot with this with your talent internally at WFG, the social aspect. And you and I were talking the other week, and we were talking about one of the C-level executives there, and kind of how they were always beating people up on, like, pick up the phone and ask for the order. And you would use that maybe as a launching pin, and then how you're helping even your customers with getting their brand out there on social media.
Yeah, I mean, as an extension to what you said, I mean, companies that the companies who are winning at a high level are people. I mean, essentially, they're an identity. And so it's not Tesla, it's Elon Musk. It's not Apple, it's Steve Jobs and now Tim Cook. And so I think there's an element there of everyone having a part to play in humanizing the brand and being a part of telling the story. And I think that's the key to social. I mean, our old CEO, our founder, someone I look up to and have learned a lot from. He's very much kind of old school Xerox sales, and he'll say, "Hey, how many calls did you make today?" And yes, that absolutely has to be a part of sales, right? I'm all for it. But there are these other elements that now I can get on social media. I can broadcast in a way that makes people feel like I'm there when I'm not there. They can get to learn about other elements that humanize me. They know that I love my puppy Benny, and they know that I love pizza, and that I'm an Oregon State football fan, even though we lose more often than we win. And those types of elements really start to become part of who I am. And now when I do make a sales call, or I do send a direct a DM to them, or I do engage with one of their content, I am not this scary sales guy calling them. I'm someone who maybe has a common interest with them. It's rapport building on steroids from that standpoint. I mean, I've had opportunities to recruit people to our company who I've never met because they liked the way that I posted on social and some of the stuff that I said. And so I just think, like, but the other side of that, I want to make sure to hit, which is it can also be used very incorrectly. I mean, one of the things I hate about logging into LinkedIn is I have 57 messages from people that I've never met telling me that I need their product or I need to sign up for a meeting with them. And it's like, come on, will you at least try to take me out to dinner before you try to take me home? Like, so I think there's this really nice balance point of like, can you just be authentic and be a human and share parts of who you are, including things that are happening in your life? And the perfect example of that, and sometimes I just split test this stuff for fun, is I can make a post about our My Home communication portal, and I can post a flyer and say, have you seen WFG's My Home collaboration portal? And I will get 0 engagement. And then I go tell a story and I say, it's pretty cool. I'm just thinking about how we've actually had, 500,000 files through My Home in the last 6 or 7 years. And it was really cool to be one of the few people who was a part of building that platform out. And I get crazy engagement. And one of those, now people are curious. Wait, what's My Home? 500,000 files? You were building it? That's so interesting, because it became a part of my story. The other one, I'm explicitly marketing to them. Here's a flyer. Give me a call if you need anything like that. And it just doesn't work.
It's such an interesting perspective, because I know over the last 3-4 weeks in my content, I've been more focused on kind of trying to take a real life situation and break it into story format, because I agree. I think the storytelling, whether it's through this video content, you and I are giving some, this is a story, right? We're giving some examples of things. So I just think that that's an art. There's a science to it, but again, I guess the whole thing about the storytelling, and this kind of leads into our next topic, sales, is tell me how you're kind of using storytelling with your salespeople and using that and building the relationship piece that you kind of mentioned. Salespeople pitching the product and they don't even know you yet.
Yeah, I mean, I I believe in a very nice cross section of modern sales skills and old school sales skills. There are very successful people who are just good at picking up the phone and making cold calls. So I by no means want to belittle that on any level. But I think back to you mentioned storytelling. I think back to a lady named Terry Shodine, and at my previous company, I got to go through Terry Shodine's training. And one of the things that I'll always be thankful for is this exercise that she put us through. And so what she had all of these people in a room do is stand up and tell a very personal story about something that's happened in our life. It could be one of our happiest moments, one of our most proud moments. It could be one of the moments that we were the most scared, or one of the moments that we experienced failure. And so you would watch person by person go up and tell these stories in a very raw emotional way. They used tonality. They had the right parts where they smirked or laughed, or when you could feel the emotion in their voice, because they've told these stories 100 times, whether they were at a family dinner, or they were at a bar with their buddies, or they were on a first date. And so then she would flip it on us and she'd say, okay, now I want everyone to go up and tell the story of your company. And so we would get up there and instantly posture changes, tone changes. We start to get very robotic. We start to we're not compelling anymore. We're using a certain voice that now, oh, I got to put my work hat on and use my work voice. And it was this like complete aha moment to me, which is like the way that you're going to actually be compelling in telling the story of your company is no different than you're going to be compelling in telling the stories of the things that you experience in life. So why do we flip a different switch when we go from telling something that's personal to telling something that's work related? And so I tell people all the time in our sales efforts, you need to understand WFG's story. Absolutely. But what's yours? Why are you here? Why, what is it that you bring to the table? What does this mean to you? And I think when you can, try to make sure you turn off that switch, the best salespeople are conversational. It's like having a beer with a buddy. They're talking to you in a completely different way. And then the salespeople who come across as really cheesy or gimmicky, or put too much pressure on people, it's easy for people to turn those people off now.
Let's talk about, in order to form a relationship, especially from a business perspective, it's cold, right? That this is a lead that's coming in, or you're out cold, outbound. Um, what's your view on providing kind of the insight, a briefing, basically showcasing maybe some different alternatives, not necessarily starting with a quick discovery and where's
Yeah.
your biggest pain point. Give me a sense of how you're helping people with that.
Yeah, I mean, well, let's start all the way back at first getting the opportunity to sit in front of someone. If you aren't different than anyone, you aren't different than anyone. If you sound the same as everyone, you sound the same as everyone. So I definitely think that people need to be a little more creative on that initial outreach. There's a model I really like called empathy, value proposition, call to action. And empathy is the step that most people skip. And so when you talk about empathy, it's like, what's the difference in me calling you and saying, "Hey, Matt, I'd really just love to grab you for a cup of coffee and pick your brain for 15 minutes. I really think we could be a good partnership." Okay, well, that's what every sales rep says. But if I call you and say, "Hey, Matt, I know I'm probably the 37th cold call you've gotten this week. And so if you feel compelled to hang up on me, go ahead and hang up. And I'm going to set you back because I've given you empathy. I've said something to you in a way that other people aren't saying. I'm trying to be respectful. And then I can get into what my value proposition and my call to action is once I have permission to do that. So, and then the other side of that is be creative. I mean, I think back to a real estate agent that I work with now, or used to work with a long time ago. And I had called her 50 times trying to get a meeting with her. And she just would ignore my voicemails, would ignore my phone calls, wouldn't respond to my emails. And shoot, if I were in her shoes, I would have too, right? Like, I'm busy. This guy keeps bugging me.
Yeah.
Oh, this is Justin again. And so I went to a website called Fiverr, which has a whole bunch of things you can buy for $5 or a little bit more. I found a person who did quick animations, and I had them do an animation of her saying yes to a meeting with me. And then I text her this 20-second video of a cartoon version of her saying yes to a cartoon version of me. And she just started laughing. She texted me back and she's like, "You're kidding me." I'm like, "No, I've been trying to get a hold of you." So like, you have to, they're called pattern disruptors. Like, you have to have some element of pattern disruption for people to take you seriously and to want to meet with you. So now you got the meeting. And I still think that there's some really amazing tools out there. I mean, you're doing your basic recon, as you mentioned, and trying to learn what you can about them. But there's a really amazing tool out there called Crystal Knows. And Crystal Knows, you can run their LinkedIn profile through it, and it will give you an idea of what their personality type is. It'll basically say, "Hey, Justin, he's high D. He likes to dominate the conversation. He wants to be the one who gets to share his expertise. He wants things to move fast. He is risk tolerant as opposed to risk adverse." And it gives you some insight in how you're going to end up communicating with that person the first time you meet with them. Matt, I can't tell you the amount of times, and I'm not trying to pick at anyone, but
Yeah.
I can't tell you the amount of times I get pitched for new products for WFG. And I'll get on a call, and one of my friends that I work with, Justin Stutz, knows this because I'll text him during the calls. I'll get on the call and I'll say, "Hey, listen, guys, I understand the use case. I understand the marketing side of things. I really just want to dig into the features and benefits. Can you just show me the product and show me how it works?" And every sales guy will go, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And then they go right back to their deck and they say, "Well, our company was founded here, and this is what we're trying to do. And let me frame the conversation of you of why video is important." It's like, I know why video is important. So when you're talking to me, the way to get to me, to my heart, is to get right to it, and then to get into the features and let me start asking questions and then answer the questions that I ask. So if you know some of that stuff ahead of time, it gives you a really big and competitive advantage because people buy with emotion and feel. They backfill with logic. So if you give the person that you're selling a bad feeling, I don't care how good your product is. It doesn't matter. So I think that it's really about trying to make sure you understand the person you're talking to. And then from a question standpoint, because I know I just talked a lot as you were saying, what's a question you could use? A question that I use often, it comes from a concept called permission-based marketing. But I always say things like, well, would it be okay if I gave you a different perspective? Or would it be okay if I gave you a little insight of what we're doing for some of our other customers that are similar to you? And I'm trying to use psychology to create like a dynamic there of, we work with people like you already, and these are these are why they work with us, and these are some of the things that we already do, and you use that to create that sentiment. And then I also think that an underused question is, tell me more about that. And it drives me nuts that we get an answer from someone and we move to the next question. And it's like, if I said to you, Matt, hey, tell me about the role that customer experience plays in your business and what your expectations of your partners are in helping to add to that. And then you give me some information. I think that what I want to do there, no matter what, is say, Matt, that's really interesting. Can you tell me a little bit more? Can you tell me a little bit more? Can you tell me a little bit more? Because I want them I don't want them to give me a quick off the shelf answer. I want them to keep digging into that. The more intel I get, the better I can be at solving their problem. So I just think that we don't do enough of that.
Wow. So many different things on that. And I was agreeing on like every single point you touched on, and just to kind of maybe add maybe two different points. I think one, from a sales, since we're kind of talking about the sales aspect here, I think one, and you know this story. So again, I'm going to use storytelling in this situation. We had a COO for a major lender and a client of WFG, and this was a couple of years ago. This person's no longer in the role there. Top lender, and the sales exec that was getting commissioned on this couldn't get this person engaged for an important meeting. We heard some things were happening internally at the C level. People like yourself, Steve Azanian, myself, Pat, a number of us were concerned about what it could do to the business. And so as the sales leader of this individual, and this is something we talked about in our meetings, I wanted to take this differentiated outward in versus, kind of inward out approach. And so I had a college intern I was coaching do a cartoon character. And I've done this before, and so I knew this was going to work. And sure enough, it did. I had them draw a cartoon of this individual, took their LinkedIn headshot, standing on top of the competition on the mountain, name of the organizations with kind of the flag, and the call to action, like, hey, look, just want to get an hour meeting with you, blah, blah, blah. Within 5 minutes, and I've never really communicated with this exec before, she was connected to me on LinkedIn. She responds, sets the meeting, gives me her assistant, gives a phone number and everything. It was like, I shared that story, right, with you and others, and because I know you loved it, like doing that level of personalization, right, telling a story, giving a visual of this COO standing on top of these major organizations. And so, I think the challenge sometimes when we have this, just think about it from a sales perspective, is, I was creative enough to use a resource I had outside that was good at graphic art that could do that for me. But, there some of these things can be, Justin, and maybe this is the question, is how do you do things like that and then scale it? What?
Yeah, I don't think
I'd like to be, right, is just talking about like ABM. This was a major account. So I think you have to differentiate, but I'll give you the floor on this one.
You're going to hate my answer. You don't scale it.
Yeah.
The whole reason it works is because it's not scalable. Everyone who wants to make sales a numbers game instead of a skills game, I think, is missing out. I mean, I've had reps in the past that worked for me that made more calls than anyone. They just never converted any. And I had people who made fewer calls, but they were so good at converting those calls. And so I think if you're doing anything on a high level of sales, that you have to turn those into one-to-one experiences. And then there's all kinds of different ways you can do that. I mean, it makes me think of another quick story of a principal broker who wouldn't take a meeting with me in a territory I was selling in. And I knew his personality. He had a good sense of humor, so I knew I could get away with this. He wasn't returning my calls, and I went down to Goodwill. I found an old rotary phone. I put it in a box with my business card and sent it over to him with a note and said, hey, I wasn't sure if your phone wasn't working. Give me a call when you get a chance. And it was just different, right? It's that pattern disruption again. And pattern disruption happens one-to-one. You can't scale that. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't a place for email marketing. That doesn't mean that there isn't a place for sales, automation and sales. But it does mean that when you're working towards getting that first meeting with someone of that type of substance, you should do that in a very personalized one-to-one unique way. And then when you have clients, you can implement little other things of, newsletters and other things that help you stay in the loop. But I'm never going to respond to someone who doesn't take that type of time. My biggest, my most frustrating thing is people sell me or reach out to me, is they always ask me out to coffee, and I hate coffee. Like, I hate coffee.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if you did any level of research, you would know that it's a joke that I don't like coffee. And so I just think you have to get to that level of personalization, or you're not going to be interesting anymore.
Yeah. And I think it's a fine line sometimes. I think, being from a sales side of this more than the marketing side, I think, this is where you see the quotas and the expectations and everything else kind of push individuals into that reactive. It's about the numbers, and I've got to do so many calls, and I've got to do so many emails. And I think that's where you just got to really step out for a second and ask yourself, and I'm going to curse here, is it fucking working?
Yeah.
So, just in today's time, based off the data that I'm seeing, 75% of salespeople aren't making quota. We got a problem, right? It's not, is it saying 75% of the sales professionals suck? Or is it 75% of the quotas suck, right? And so I'm with you on that. And I think I've got to take my own advice on that. I get into that habit sometimes of stepping out, pausing, and really do more of that. So I love that. Thank you.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and as you can see, I mean, I was talking about consuming. I love to read and listen to things and constantly get exposed to new information. And there's kind of two sales trainers I really like and for different reasons. There's a gentleman named Mike Weinberg. He has a book called New Sales Simplified. And when you're looking for the foundational elements of sales, I haven't seen anyone do it better than him. And that's, building that foundation. And there's another gentleman named Jeremy Lee Minor. He's someone I follow on Instagram. He's got some really great content. He, to me, is like where you go to that ninja level in sales, because he talks about mastering pace and tonality and other things. He talks about sounding like a human instead of a salesperson, and how do you, hyper personalize and all of that. And so between the two of those guys, I mean, I think that they've gotten the full spectrum of sales covered.
Yeah. Great advice there. So from a time check, we've got about 15 minutes left. And so what I'd like to do is talk about tech on the sales side, even the MarTech side. You mentioned Crystal knows. Let's do that. I want to hear from you on some other tech features or solutions out there that you would highly recommend. I'll do the same. And then our call to actions. I'll let you go first. Give maybe one or two key points that people should take from this. I'll do the same, and we'll adjourn. So on the tech side, other key technologies that you would recommend for maybe break it into sales versus marketing professionals?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I know it's a dirty three-letter word, but CRM. I mean, we have HubSpot as our CRM. I think the key is to build a CRM for salespeople, not to monitor salespeople. So you want to make it as easy as possible. You want to bring something to the table for them that's going to take care of the sales side and the marketing side. And then there's all kinds of enhancements to it. I was just looking at the new Zoom Revenue Accelerator plugin, which will actually like break down sales calls and measure sentiment, and when did someone smile versus frown, and what were the takeaways from the meeting, and here's all of your automatic follow-up tasks. And I think that's really interesting. I think that a very underutilized concept in our space right now is gamification. There's some really great gamification tools out there, Sales Screen and Spinify and Ambition. Those are overlays on top of your CRM that create a more of a carrot approach than a stick approach, that you're rewarding people for the things that they're doing and creating some of that friendly competition. So I'm big there. We actually have a product for the real estate space at our sister company called My Home Prompts. My Home Prompts is an AI tool that has real estate created prompts that make it really easy for you to get the outputs that you want for all of your marketing. So there's a lot of interesting stuff there. On the organizational side, we use a product that I love called profit.co to organize our OKRs for the company. Very awesome collaborative portal to setting up OKRs, objective and key results, and all of the business planning around there. We use a product called Monday for project management. They're a great solution there, when you're looking for more of that structural stuff. And then I'll tell you a little bit about what I'm excited about in the future. We're working on setting up, actually Zoom acquired them recently, something called Work Vivo, which is an internal social network. It's a communication play, and it's about being able to have people communicate, get push notifications, jump on and go live with your staff, having kind of news feeds of everything that's going on, and really kind of leveling up the communication there. So there's a ton out there. I could go on and on and
Yep.
on. I think the key there is to pick a couple in different categories, and then to get them implemented, and then to iterate. We're changing our CX system because we found a better one, but we used the same one for 6 years. So I'll continue to go back to, go out, try, and then, iterate off of that process.
No, it's kind of like me in the BI side. Anybody that's worked with me knows my data geek skills with Tableau, and you saw me use Tableau a lot with our CRM extracts and use that for dashboards. On the reporting side, I'm a big Tableau lover, and one reason why is it's user friendly. But I think on my side, in most of these, have been in more of the sales role, but also as a business owner, going out with thought leadership. I use Salesforce. I've been on that. I have used HubSpot briefly, but just for the independent. It's a leading CRM for me, but I think you and I both agree on this point. Start with the CRM, find the CRM, and then you build kind of around that. So we both have the CRM. Seamless AI, definitely for intent data, contact data. There's some automation. I'm not really using the automation part of it. I'm using it more to refine the ICP, and then using that again from an outward in perspective for buyer intent, and getting that intent. And Zoom info, also another good one for that buyer intent data. Sybil, Sybill AI for AI note taking. When you're in sales and marketing, you're on live calls, getting that detailed transcript. You've seen me use it with you as we were prepping for this. And so great solution there. Genie AI is really my connection into the chat GPT, and that's something I've been now using for almost about a year. And it's great for doing the research, the outlines, the prep, all that key point, connecting. It will even now on some of my posts, the illustrations I use, I'll say, here's what I want this person to look like and do. And, whether it's a painting or an actual photo, it's amazing how that's advancing as fast as it is. And so that's a great solution that's been used. Beautiful AI, you and I talked about this. A lot of presentations when you're in sales and marketing, right? You're putting a thought out there. And so can't say enough about that. Again, uploading files into it that you put together your outline, and then I still will spend probably putting a deck together that's maybe 10, 15 slides. I still probably spend about an hour of my time, but that hour would have been 10x that if I didn't have beautiful AI. So the productivity, I'm able to fork out so much content now because of that solution. And then typical tools that most marketing people, sales probably not as much. So you salespeople, I believe that you've got to start dipping your hands in this more. Don't wait for marketing to generate your content. Justin and I talked about this before up front, that you're out there as a brand ambassador yourself. And so Canva, very user-friendly from your LinkedIn banners, your Facebook cover pages, and then Venage, Vennage, great for documents and PDF creation. And I think that's another key trend that's going is, Justin, is, PDFs are going to probably another year be truly outdated. Everything's going to be more dynamic. And for us old school people that like PDFs, great, you'll get the PDF. But a lot of it, again, is going digital, more dynamic, having your pictures, everything will be linked. With AI, you and I probably not too far off, we'll have mini Justins and mini Matts, right? Where, to your point, you're not going to be on a meeting, but mini Justin will be. He'll come back. He'll tell you the key aspects of the meeting. And by the way, Justin, I signed you up for XYZ deliverables, right? It's moving that fast. And so I guess this leads to our call to action. What do we want people to take away from this discussion today? I'll give you the floor.
Yeah, I mean, I'll keep it simple, which is just iterate. I mean, I see folks that do the same thing over and over and expect a different result. I also see people who get stuck in that kind of analysis paralysis side of things, and getting to action, getting to movement, and then learning from that along the way and iterating. That's where we've been able to find a lot of success, because where we started is not where we ended up. And to be good at anything, you have to first be willing to suck at it.
I was going to say that, so you took the one I was going to. So I'll reinforce it, but the other one I kind of had three backups. Is just really evaluate, and we talked about this, Justin. Evaluate and enhance your customer experience strategy. I think start there, and then I would probably say 1A is that. 1B is do your employee experience, especially again when you have a bigger company like yourself. But start with the strategy, and this is where people like Justin and myself will give you continue to share our thoughts. And obviously in my practice, I work with companies in this, and so I think that's my takeaway from this. Focus on laying out that strategy in this next quarter. Perfect time of year to do it. And Justin, can't say enough about your insight, your passion, your humor. So thank you, my friend.
Oh, thanks for having me, Matt. It's fun to always chat with you about this stuff.
Thank you.